Hey everybody, it's the next day and the hair is fluffed up as it will do when I sleep on it. So, yesterday I asked for ramble suggestions and y'all provided. So, first up, this is CBD only, by the way. No nicotine, no THC. First comment is from Paul, although not the Paul who usually comments. Although the Paul who usually comments also commented. But from Paul. Paul writes, wishing you well, KMO. Thank you, Paul. You've lived all over. Care to share any reflections on these places and your life journey through them, as well as the lifestyle you've made for yourself? What do you make of being so nomadic? How do these experiences inform your upcoming trip to Mexico and beyond? And Pleopod also asked me to talk about my time in Australia. So here we go. This could be a long one. So the first thing to know is that when I was a kid, my father worked for the United States Secret Service. And I don't know if it's still the case, but when when I was young and he was working for the federal government, to get promoted, you had to accept a transfer. So we moved every 2 years when I was a kid. So I was born in Fayetteville, Arkansas, but I have no memory of having lived in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Apparently, we lived on a busy street, and as soon as I could walk, I was like out in the street. There was no containing me. So my mother moved me to the house where she lives now, which was her parents' house at the time. It's now her house. I have a room there. That's where my TV is. That's where my podcasting rig is. It's my base of operations now, that house. And I don't really remember that time either. I was too young. My conscious recollections begin in Webster Grove, which is it is a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. And when we lived there. I have some memories of living there. Then my father got transferred to Spokane, Washington. And I was there from like kindergarten through part of the first grade. Transferred after that to Pleasant Hill, California, which is a suburb of San Francisco. I was in the third grade. No, I was in the first grade. I was there for all of first grade, or the remainder of first grade, and all of second grade, and all of third grade. And then we moved to Kansas City, Missouri, when I was in fourth grade. And I was in Kansas City. That's the place I've lived the longest in my whole life. I was there from fourth grade through 2 years of community college. While we were there, my father, he started off protecting Bess Truman, the widow of Harry Truman, in Independence, Missouri. And then he got promoted and he accepted a transfer to the Kansas City field office, but we didn't have to move because, Kansas City and Independence are contiguous. And thereafter, he turned down a couple of promotions because my mom didn't want to move. And then he pissed off his boss and he didn't get offered any more promotions. And so after 20 years in the federal service, he took retirement and went into the private sector and did private security work and then later code enforcement for the city of Lee Summit, Missouri, which is where he was living when he killed himself. So I moved around a lot as a kid. To me, coming into consciousness of the world and how to get along in it, it was just totally normal to just move, just to trade in everything that is familiar for a whole new set of circumstances. So I lived in Kansas City. I grew up in Kansas City, basically. And then I went away to college in Columbia, Missouri, so just a couple hours away down I-70. Spent a year in Japan as a student, came back. Then I was in grad school for like 3 years in the same place in Columbia, Missouri. And eventually the teaching position and the stipend and the tuition waiver and all that went away because I was there too long without getting a degree. And I left without a degree. I had almost all the coursework done, but I hadn't defended a thesis, so I don't have a master's degree, but I should. My father was very disappointed that I did not get that master's degree. He was very credentials oriented. Anyway, from there I went to Seattle, where I got a job at Amazon. I was there in Seattle proper for a couple years, then moved out to the Olympic Peninsula after I left Seattle. And that was the mistake career-wise, to take the money which was like 660,000 is what I got when I cashed in my stock options. Cashing in the stock options was foolish because if I'd held on to them for even a year, that would have been many millions of dollars. But then just going out to the Olympic Peninsula, buying a nice house, and just sort of chilling out there. That's where my then wife, gave birth to our first child, where we lived for a while. The money ran out. We sold the house and moved. Well, we went to Thailand just to hang out while the house was on the market because we didn't actually have the money from the sale at the time. And that was a cheap place to hang out. But it was also a difficult place to travel with a 2-year-old and lots of baggage, which is what we had. And we were about to head back to this side of the planet, and we were going to go to Costa Rica and maybe buy a place in Costa Rica. And my now ex-wife, her grandfather and his wife lived in Perth, Australia. And we thought, hey, while we're on this side of the planet, let's just pop into Perth and see what's what. So we did. We flew through Singapore and then to Perth. And after traveling in Thailand for a month with a 2-year-old, Australia was so easy. It was so familiar. It was so accommodating. And we just loved it. And we got there, I think it was in November, which is spring in Australia. So the temperature was quite mild. So we rented a townhouse and bought a used car and decided to hang out. And we were there for 6 months. And we looked into buying a business, and I'm glad we didn't because it would have gone terribly wrong. But we got there in spring, and then summer hit, and then we basically just huddled inside in the air conditioning most of the time when we weren't road tripping. Lots of road tripping. Lots of drinking there too. In fact, when we were living out on the Olympic Peninsula, we acquired a taste for a particular bubbly being champagne that doesn't come from the Champagne region of France, so just a sparkling, bubbly white wine. And the US dollar was strong against the Australian dollar, and because it was an Australian bubbly, it was basically free. We drank a lot. We drank every day. We had this little utility closet where we would stash our empty wine bottles, and every now and again I would haul them all down to the recycling in the basement, and it was embarrassing, the quantity of empty wine bottles that I had to dispose of. Anyway, then we came back to the U.S. and moved to Arkansas, where we were going to build a farm on some family land. I was obsessed with the writings of Michael Pollan then. He had not written anything about psychedelics at the time. He was writing about building and gardening, and I think The Omnivore's Dilemma had come out at that point. But it was his book, A Place of My Own, and Second Nature, A Gardener's Education, that really had me wanting to build my own Earthship-style house and farm on some land. And I tried to do that and ran out of money before the house was built and had to move to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I got a job selling insurance. Ugh. And I was selling insurance when podcasting happened, when I first discovered podcasting. And within a few months of discovering that such a thing as podcasting existed, I was doing a podcast. And looking back on my life, it looked like I'd been preparing to do a podcast for a long time. So from there, we moved to Maryland. And that was an attempt to placate my now ex-wife, who was very, very unhappy and was, wanting out of the marriage at that point. And that was the nail in the coffin, because apparently she already had something going on with somebody in Maryland. And we weren't there long when I got the text message while I was at work saying she'd taken the kids, that it was over, she wasn't going to tell me where she was or where the kids were, and I couldn't see them. And that was the darkest time of my whole life. That was the worst. And then I quit my job at Comcast, and I was going to go on this speaking tour, like this couch surfing speaking tour with Neil Kramer. This is in 2009. And I had no idea, what I was going to do when that was over. And on the second leg of that tour on the West Coast, I got an email from Albert Bates inviting me to come and be the winter caretaker at the Eco Village Training Center on the farm in Summertown, Tennessee. And by the time I got there, winter was almost over. But really, he was just throwing me a lifeline. And we looked for various positions and job roles for me. And really, the only thing that seemed to stick was just podcaster in residence. And, lots of people were coming through there, and I recorded lots of great interviews there. I'm sure, people who are familiar, longtime listeners to the C-Realm podcast will remember the wealth and variety of interview subjects that I had access to, for one-on-one or, one-to-many, but usually one-on-one, face-to-face, like sit-down interviews. And that's a good time. It's also a miserable time for me because I was still fresh from the divorce and being hounded, by the state of Maryland for child support and threatened by them all the time. Anyway, it was a miserable time, but also a very productive time for me, in terms of the podcast. And then I was there for a couple years, and then I moved to New York City to live with Olga. We were there for 4.5 years or so. And then she sold that place. We moved to Vermont. And things between us, they were pretty much over by the time we got to Vermont. But I did live with her there for a year and a half. And then I moved out and I lived on my own in an apartment in Vermont for like 3 years, I guess. And then I moved to Arkansas. Now I'm here. Oh, I've skipped the whole Alaska adventure in college. And I've skipped the second Japan adventure too. Gosh. So this is not a complete recounting, but anyway, I've lived in Japan twice, teaching English the second time. And that was exciting and fun, and it was good for me in my 20s. I wouldn't want to do it now, really, particularly because the whole Orientalism and romantic, esotericism of the East, that's just ancient history to me. I am not the least bit romantic about Japan, having lived there twice. There are aspects of it that I like. There are aspects of it that I really dislike that you just wouldn't know about if you've never lived there. But the question is, what do I make of this itinerant lifestyle? And I've been looking for a place to be the final place for a long time. A long time. I was looking for a place to settle down and raise my kids, and my kids are grown now, and I still haven't found a place. You could say the house in Arkansas, which I guess when my mom dies will be mine, or she'll leave it to my brother and me, but I expect he'll want to buy out. It's been unintentional, but I've been going for so long looking for the place that was going to be the place. I've lost all faith that such a destination exists, or that I'll recognize it when I get there, or that I'll be able to stop moving. Which, I think it was Rick who suggested I find a place and settle down before I start looking for a romantic relationship, which makes sense. That's good advice, and I value it, and I thank you for it. It seems hard to follow. I think my half-realized or half explicit intention has been to find a woman who's okay with travel, like continuous, like nomadic lifestyle travel, which really limits the possibilities. Now, I thought I was going to move to Pennsylvania, which is pretty close to where my kids live, and be with the person that broke up with me 2 months ago or a month ago. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So, I don't know. That's something I have not been talking to the therapist about. I had a very nice conversation with the therapist today. And in fact, we were so into it that we went over the 50-minute mark and then over the 1 hour mark. So what do I think, or what do I make of this itinerant lifestyle? It's not one that I consciously said, yes, I'm going to live this way for fucking decades. In fact, I had explicitly plan to find a place and stop moving, and I just haven't. So I don't know what to make of that. Y'all can make of that what you will. Offer your comments, observations, theories, whatnot. I'm interested. What do you think? So Cleopatra asked about Australia in particular. I was in West Australia, living in Fremantle, which is, actually it was in South Fremantle, or South Freo as they call it, which is like a half-hour drive south of Perth. And then in the southwest corner of Australia is just this little peninsula that is just, it's relaxed, it's gorgeous, It's just an easygoing place, and that's where we were thinking of buying this fruit and vegetable store, in which we didn't do because some friends of ours who lived in Denmark, Australia, which is the town where we were going to buy the place, they had an accountant in Perth, and they had us, make an appointment with the accountant. The accountant got the books for the business and dug into them and said, no, this is not a profitable business. These business owners are, one, they're charging you for your youth and energy because they were an old couple. And two, they're slowly going into debt to their suppliers. And, you'd be better off working at McDonald's, he basically said, which we couldn't do. That wasn't an option to us. Not being Australian citizens, we could buy a business or we could buy a bush block and build on it and get, residents, but we couldn't get jobs. But I absolutely love Australia. I love Australia. So at the time, I'll link to this in the comments. At the time that we were there was a commercial for Telstra, which is basically the Australian, AT&T or whatever. It's the big telecom company. And it was a modern and truncated rendition of a very Australian song called I Am Australian. And it was on heavy rotation. I saw the commercial again and again on TV, heard it on the radio, and I got really kind of attached to it, nostalgic about it. And even to this day, I can put it on. Like, the video for the commercial is still available on YouTube. That's the link in the description. I can watch that and get kind of teary-eyed and even get sort of nationalistic for Australia. And I'm not a citizen of Australia, never have been, probably never will be. And I was only there for 6 months, but it made a strong impression. I really love Australia. I would love to go back. Oh, and I won't read the whole comment, but Parker asked me if I've seen Avatar 2. I was thinking about catching the TART, which is the Tahoe and Truckee area rapid transit system, which is a free bus that goes around the west side of the lake. And it goes as far as Incline Village, which is on the Nevada side. But there's a movie theater there, and Avatar is playing there, and it starts at 4 p.m., and I can catch the DART there, and it's only 20 minutes. On the DART. And I was going to go see it yesterday, but the DART stops running. Avatar is 3 hours and 12 minutes. There'll probably be 20 minutes worth of trailers and commercials and such. So it probably wouldn't be out until after 8:30, and the bus has stopped running by then. So I'd have to walk home, and it's an hour and a half walk. So I opted not to. But yeah, I absolutely want to see Avatar, The Way of Water, preferably in IMAX, preferably in 3D. But, if not, I'll take it on a small movie theater screen that certainly beats my iPad, or even my TV at home. But yeah, I remember seeing the original Avatar in the theater, and at the time I was against 3D. Every 3D movie I had seen prior to Avatar gave me a headache, and I went to see Avatar in spite of it being in 3D, and the 3D was excellent. It was, James Cameron cracked the code. I did not get a headache. It looked great. It wasn't gimmicky. So yeah, I'd love to see it in 3D. But it's not essential, because aside from Avatar, I still don't like 3D. But last night, I rewatched the original Avatar on Disney Plus on my iPad with headphones. And man, the visual spectacle is lost on the tiny little screen, but it's still pretty to look at. But from my perspective, the thing that's brilliant about Avatar is the thing that everybody criticized at the time, and it's the story. They called it Dances with Smurfs, all the Pomo talk about white colonizers, savior complex, blah, blah, blah. Fuck all that. This is a story and a set of images that James Cameron had been gestating in his imagination since the late 70s. And yeah, it's just not realistic or reasonable to expect somebody who spends a lifetime bringing a story to the screen like that for it to compare favorably to your up-to-the-minute political ideology. To criticize it on grounds that it is not compatible with the academic flavor of the minute is just stupid. It's a stupid idea. You know, that somebody who spent this long and developed new technology and just sacrificed so much. Like, there was a 12-year gap between Titanic and Avatar. And after Titanic, James Cameron could have done anything he wanted. He could have made any movie he wanted, but the one he wanted to make demanded that he push filmmaking technology to a new level. And it took him 12 years. And it's been 13 years to get to the sequel. So that, you know, James Cameron's career to me is just astounding. And the things that make his movies work is he understands the emotions. He understands, you know, where to put emotional beats, how to use the emotions of the characters to get us, the viewers, to invest our emotions and our hopes for their success in them. And Avatar, I just watched it last night. It's brilliant. It's brilliant at that. You know, it is brilliant storytelling. Is it simple? Yes, it's simple. Simple doesn't mean simplistic. Simple doesn't mean easy. It is difficult to craft a simple but compelling narrative. And it is easy to just layer on lots and lots of detail and nuance in an unorganized, uninspired, unengaging fashion. So, yeah, I absolutely am going to see Avatar: The Way of Water in the theater. The bigger the screen, the better, in 3D if possible. But, you know, I'll take what I can get. All right, so travels around this globe and in fictional style to the Earth-like moons of exoplanets, the blue Jupiter. All right. If there are other things you want me to talk about, I'm here to talk about them. I don't know if I'm going to work today. My back really, really hurts. In fact, that's why I'm out here making this video right now, and that's why this video is so long, because I can't sit down. I have to keep walking. I have to keep standing or walking. And I wrote to my supervisor, and I explained the situation, and I said, look, I'm going to be equally uncomfortable at work as I am at home, or, you know, not at work, because I don't think of the place where I lay my head here at night as home. Should I come in? I don't know if he's responded. You know, because it could be we'll be getting paid to sit around and do nothing, which I'd hate to miss out on that. But at the same time, that would be the longest, most uncomfortable shift for me, because I'd just be standing the whole time in the break room in primary. I would much rather walk and shovel for 8 hours, 9 hours. All right. I'm going to stop talking now. You can start typing.